In my opinion, it's better to hire someone who obviously knows what they're doing as well as can do it more efficiently and faster. But if you really don't have those funds, getting your hands dirty is the best way to be able to really move things forward. Podcasts like yours and books that will help you learn about the tactics of marketing as well as the technical aspect of execution are really important. Just kind of going into the milestone model, so it's broken up into 3 different stages. First stage is actually the foundational stage. This is where we assess where a company's at when it comes to their brand design, their brand messaging, their website. Stage 2 is trust. Trust with the internet, trust with visitors. Now let's move you to stage 3, which is building your business and scaling. Yeah. That's where you pay for Google ads, social media ads, email marketing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. In today's episode, we are joined by Kason Olson. Kason is a digital marketing leader based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Despite his challenges with ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia, Kason excelled academically with the support of his family and mentors. He currently serves as a digital marketing lead at Qubescan and is the founder of Arctic Marketing Solutions, where he helps small to medium-sized businesses grow through innovative marketing strategies. Kason's work combines creativity with technical expertise, particularly in making websites compliant with legal standards like WCAG and ADA. He also plans to reignite his passion for lacrosse by participating in an adult league. Through his professional endeavors, Kason is committed to advancing the digital landscape by helping businesses adapt and thrive in this digital era. Welcome to the show, Kason.
Thanks for having me, Eli. It's an honor. I've been listening to your show since you've started, and honestly, I've loved all the people you've had so far, and so I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, man, I'm way excited to have you on. We've had a couple of phone calls and emails and LinkedIn communications over the past little while, and I admire what you're doing. I love your stance on a lot of the stuff you post on LinkedIn, and I'm excited to dig in and learn a little bit more about you today.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, yeah, so let's jump into it. Tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up? Let's learn a little bit about Kason.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it's just about an hour and a half south of Denver. A lot of people know where that is, but don't know where Colorado Springs is. I was one of 4 siblings. I have 1 sister, 2 brothers, and our family was very active. So we loved to do sports or dance or go hiking and camping. So that was obviously a very big growing up. And one of the things I also did growing up was I played lacrosse. So I played that since I was like 10, all the way up throughout high school. And yeah, I also love to snowboard. Snowboarding's my zen. Whenever I'm at the top of the mountain, just like going through that fresh air, I'm just like, it's nice. I also grew up I had a double diagnosis of ADD and ADHD. So kind of a mix between those two. And on top of that, I even had dyslexia growing up as well. I guess I still technically have those, right? So
yeah,
definitely kind of difficult kind of going through life. Especially academically, right? A lot of people didn't have what I have. And so I'd be working like 10 times harder than they did for like mediocre grades of like C pluses and B minuses, right? Where they would do half as much as I would, and they'd be getting B's and A's.
Yeah.
But yeah, so grew up there. I currently live here, obviously in Utah. I have a wonderful wife, Savannah, and 2 little girls, both Evangeline and Cosette, 4 and 2. So It's been fun being a dad and kind of figuring out life in general that way too, because it's totally different from growing up, right?
Oh yeah, being an adult is tough. I was talking to a friend the other day about that, and being an adult sometimes has challenges that we never expected.
Oh yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to dig in a little bit more on your childhood. So dyslexia and ADD, ADHD. I feel like I don't know if my parents officially tested me for any of those, but I feel like I did have some of that. I mixed up my letters. I don't read well out loud. And I felt the same way. Like you were saying, like some people in my class could just read something and just comprehend what it meant and answer the question. Like, it took me so much, especially during tests, to comprehend what I was reading and get through that. Is that kind of how you felt too?
Oh yeah. Like I probably would say, obviously, with the dual diagnosis of ADD and ADHD, it was kind of hard because um, there are two different types, right? One's kind of high
Hmm.
deficit disorder, so being able to pay attention, and then the other one, ADHD, is
Hmm.
okay, like hyperactive, right? So like you literally can't focus because you need to just do something all the time, and it's just like constant, right? So like sitting down in a
Yeah.
classroom while having kind of both of those was just like I can't pay attention like you, right? Like I
Yeah.
would read something or someone else would read something, and it would take me 3 or 4 times to like reread it to be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I finally get it."
Man, that's tough. I have a daughter who has ADHD, and it's hard for her to be in the class, and she is constantly like, "Look, a squirrel!" Like, constantly distracted here and at school. So, man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I had some friends that had ADD and ADHD. I don't know that I had that, but I'm fairly certain I had dyslexia, and still do. And really, the lifesaver for me was all of the audio tools that exist now. So Audible, audiobooks and stuff like that. But then I also, when I write texts or when I receive big texts, I have my phone read it to me. And audio, like through audio, I compute everything, right? But if I have to read it, it takes me a while to like comprehend what's actually going on. So luckily, the kids nowadays have some of that technology to help them get through stuff that we didn't when we were younger.
Yeah, I'm kinda jealous because, like, now, like, what you were saying, like, I have the ability to be able to have something read to me, and then I can be able to
Hmm.
more instantaneously understand, like, what something means or what's going on and stuff like that, rather than, like, having to reread it a bajillion times, and when it comes to, like, everybody has different stances on medication when it comes to it too, right? And so it was actually kind of interesting because I had that dual diagnosis and, literally 15 years ago, like the only options they had were for one or the other, right? Only ADD
Mm,
or only ADHD. They didn't have anything really
yeah.
coherent with that. And so it was actually, I think it was my my junior year of high school actually, where we found
Hmm.
a neurotherapist
Hmm.
and he does a bunch of different things, but pretty much what he did was he scanned my brain and he found the different areas that were like, okay, like this area is firing off correctly, but this isn't. Your frontal cortex is actually doing really good and almost hyperactive, right? Kind of with the
Yeah.
ADHD. But then your part of the brain in the back, like there's almost like a disconnect. Like your short
Mm,
term memory is great and understanding and like being able to pay, stuff like that. But then long term memory is horrible. So like when I
yeah.
would study like crazy for tests, would remember when I'm studying, but when I go into the test, it was gone. And so I actually
Yeah.
worked with him for I want to say about 6 months, and it was actually pretty interesting. But he pretty much did was he sat me in front of a screen and he measured the different areas of my brain, and I played what were called like neuro games, right? So I would
Yeah.
have to physically activate different parts of my brain mentally to be able to activate that part of the brain or like help the game interact correctly. And then by
Yeah.
doing that so many times with repetition, I was actually physically creating new neural and strengthening neural pathways in my brain. And so that's
Wow.
actually what helped, I would say, conquer or like almost, I would say like 90% resolve those issues that I had. And so, like, even today, like, I feel like that has made an immense difference in how I'm able to work, how I'm able to comprehend
Wow.
things, like life just in general. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty amazing what our bodies can do.
Dude, yeah, the power of the human brain. That's awesome. I might have to talk to you offline about that and see if we can connect one of my daughters with that, because that sounds awesome, and it sounds like a better way to go long term than just medicating somebody the whole time and just hoping
Exactly.
for the best, right? And I think as back in our day, it was looked at as, and it still kind of is. It has the connotation of being something that's somewhat negative. But if you look at the data, and I don't know the data off the top of my head, but the amount of leaders in this world and CEOs in this world and business owners in this world that grew up with ADD and ADHD and dyslexia, they're like, there's a lot now, right? So you look at your kids who go through that and you're like, hey man, this is actually like a superhuman strength if you can get it to work in your favor. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so you're in Colorado Springs, which by the way, I love Colorado Springs. We've been there quite a few times as a family. We love going to Great Wolf Lodge out there. And a lot of fun. My brother went to college out in Colorado, so we've been out there a few times. So then you graduate high school. What happens after high school? How did you get from there to here?
Yeah, so I graduated high school, and literally within the same week, I went up to Utah State. So I have quite a bit of family here in Utah, mainly my mom's side, and so it was, close to family, but still like I was still trying to distinguish myself from living at home with my parents, right? Just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I've actually been to 3 different universities. And so I went to Utah State for a couple semesters. And then after that, I went and served a mission for my church for 2 years, came back. I then went to Brigham Young University of Idaho for a couple of years, got my associates there finally. And then after I got my associates there, I then moved and got my bachelor's at Utah Valley University. So I did a little bit of hopping, and it was fun, different experiences everywhere and whatnot. But as I did a lot of that hopping and transitioning, I kind of recognized and saw, okay, well, they're teaching a lot of good things, but I almost feel like I'm missing something, right? And so part of obviously the academic curriculum is that you have to go in and like do internships, right? So when I was at BYU Idaho, actually, I was like, oh yeah, like entrepreneurship, like that's what I want to go into, because I had talked while I was on my mission, I had just talked to everybody that I could, right? And one of the questions I always ask people is, what did you do for work and why you loved it so much? And the people that I found that loved their job, like, or at least were more excited on the outside, right? Were those who either owned their own business or kind of went through the entrepreneurial journey, and they were just like giddy about it, right? And so I was like, wow, like that's pretty contagious. Like I kind of want that too. And well, the problem with going that route is academically, there was no degree for entrepreneurship, right? There was no internship for me to be able to, I couldn't shadow a business owner and be like, all right, I'll just, help you out or whatever for those internship credits, because, well, business owners are crazy busy, and it's not like he'd have really the time to be able to mentor me like 24/7, right? And so I was like, oh, well, I'm in a predicament now. Like, how am I supposed to graduate? If I want to go into entrepreneurship, but like, what's the next best thing, right? And so as I was thinking, I was like, you know what? Like the only way that people are actually able to know about a business is if you market it. You have to be known to actually sell something or have clients or customers or whatever it is. And so it's like, okay, well, marketing is pretty dang close. So I'll go into that. So I ended up switching my major into that, got an internship. And then from there, from my associate's degree, or just a year before I got my associate's degree, all the way up until I got my bachelor's, which was like the next 4.5 years, because it took me a little bit. I then worked within that industry and departments of marketing until I graduated college. I obviously had different jobs from that point. And then it wasn't until, 2020 where a lot of people were getting laid off, and COVID pandemic happened, where I was like, and I was subject to that. I had been at a company for 2 years, and they were like, hey, we're sorry, but we can't pay you anymore. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And so like, I was like, all right, well, how do I go about this? And so I obviously was able to find a couple more other jobs that filled it. I had a couple part-time gigs that added up to full-time. But then as I was thinking, I was like, like, there's got to be a better way for me to be able to have a more secure job. And 2, for me to be able to also help other people when it comes to marketing. Because in those jobs, like I had outsourced to different agencies, freelancers on Fiverr or Upwork or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of them either didn't know what they were doing or they were very like secretive of what they were doing. And you were wondering, what kind of results you were actually getting from that. And so
Yeah.
that kind of sparked like the entrepreneurial side of me. Then I was like, it had been a couple years and I was like, you know what? I can help people. I can be able to
Yeah.
help people grow through marketing. I'm good at what I do, right? I've been able to help
Mhm.
these companies grow, develop different um, channels or departments or, programs or whatever it may be. So like, how can I make that happen? And so then
Mhm.
that was the birth of Arctic Marketing. And so,
Nice. So
yeah.
did you focus on any specific skill set at the previous companies, or did you find yourself going from like, well, one company wanted SEO and the other company wanted paid and the other company, like, how did that all play out so that you felt like you could build Arctic Marketing and really handle all of it?
Yeah, so I actually had the privilege to be able to kind of dip my toes in a lot of the different channels of marketing. And with me, kind of going back to that like ADD, ADHD, when you put something in the mind of individuals like us, you soak everything you can in like a sponge and you just light the fire, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I was actually hired on after one of my internships to build kind of a marketing department and internship program for a small company. And they kind of owned three different companies that just needed that help. And
Hmm.
so I had the chance to just like dive in, to each of the different channels, figure out different softwares and platforms, best practices, stuff like that. And then I got to teach it to like 5 or 6 interns every 3 months,
Hmm.
and that allowed me to really ingrain a lot of those things into
Yeah.
obviously like my best practice, my processes and whatnot. But it also allowed me to be able to say, okay, like what are the new things I can teach? What are the innovations that are
Yeah.
happening? Because digital marketing is changing all the time.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, these are the things that work. That this doesn't really work. And then from there, I was actually able to like go in and say, okay, like I love all these different channels. And um, one of my mentors that I had talked to, I was like, I know all this stuff, but like, how do I grow? And they're all like,
Hmm.
the advice they gave was, okay, well, you know all these things. It's great strategically, but maybe dive into like one specific thing, get really, really good at that. And then that helps you be able to branch out to the other channels.
Yeah.
So when I did that, then I was like, okay, web design and development is like my favorite thing. Mixes the
Hmm.
technology aspect of like coding or whatever, as well as the design aspect of like, building something creatively. And
Yeah.
so from there, I kind of just added that and then added in kind of a couple other things that helped formulate, you know, that skill set.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like I was able to have my toes dipped in a lot of the different channels, and then I was able to see which ones specifically worked for small and medium sized businesses specifically, because
Hmm.
that's who I was working with a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, how can I incorporate a lot of these things into my work?
It's interesting that you lean towards the design and the development side of things. I feel like that's kind of like left brain, right brain. People who are really good at that are, or who enjoy doing it over and over and over, versus somebody who does something like SEO versus somebody who does something like paid ads. And I think even paid ads and SEO is a little bit different too. But I think maybe because of your, need to focus because of your ADD and ADHD and like visualizing, maybe I'm wrong, but for me, I love to like visualize things from start to finish. I loved, growing up with my dad. We built onto our house, and I loved working on a portion of the house, and at the end of the day, stepping back and being like, we did that, and being proud of it, right? And with SEO, you kind of do it, and then you step back and you wait like 8 months, and then you're like, oh, there are the results. But with design and development, you do something that day, and it's like, there you go. I did that. That's
Yep.
like the satisfaction, the gratification. Is that probably why you lean more towards that?
I probably would say so. Yeah, because I'm one that loves to see those. kind of results, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
like instant growth or like, obviously when we're talking about marketing terms, like people converting into customers or leads or,
Yeah.
like people going through a funnel or things that I really love um, about like, or just like in general, like seeing
Mm-hmm.
things happen. Right. And so I think that's probably why I kind of leaned more into that. And then from that, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
build the foundation of like everything else.
Nice. That's awesome. What are you currently working on? What gets you up in the morning and excites you?
Yeah. Um, well, as you kind of mentioned before, like I have two jobs. I
Mm-hmm.
have a salary position here at Qubescan as their digital marketing lead. And so I help them from, 9 to 5 be able to do what they need and help their online
Mm-hmm.
presence with website, SEO, their campaigns, product marketing, almost
Nice.
anything and everything under the sun,
Mm-hmm.
marketing strategy. Um, but some of the things on the Arctic side of things that I'm like super excited about is we're growing pretty rapidly, actually. So even though I started in 2020, all by myself,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make ends meet, make things work. Now in 2024, almost 4 years later, we're actually like growing to the point where, we have actual teams to be able to help internal development, right? And to be able to
Nice.
service these. So we have a whole team for like SEO. We have a team for design and development of websites. We have branding and brand design. And so as, now that we're growing, it's like, oh, the puzzle pieces are starting to fit
Yeah.
together and be able to move things along. So I guess just in general of like growing a business, things have
Mm-hmm.
been going not only well, but like exciting. And that's what really gets me up in the morning. But one
Mm-hmm.
thing that has been really cool recently, and I can't really disclose too much information, but one of the clients and companies that we're working with was actually um, they were referred to us by one of our partners, but they are actually currently being sued because their website is not WCAG or ADA compliant. And so what those mean is WCAG is Website Content Accessibility Guidelines, and then
Mm-hmm.
ADA is Americans with Disability Act. And
Mm-hmm.
so for people who don't know what that is, back in 2016, a blind individual actually sued Domino's because he was not able to order pizza off their website. And so because of that, they went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court favored him eventually, a few years later. And we're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in the Americas at least, and
Yeah.
actually in Europe and a lot of other places, we need to make sure that the website is accessible to anybody with any kind of disability, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
astigmatism, color blindness, uh, literal blindness, and the list kind of goes on. And so nowadays it's like so many businesses, because they don't know that, or their website developer doesn't maybe like do that service,
Mm-hmm.
all these businesses are starting to get sued because of these new laws that have occurred since 2016. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're currently actually in the middle of the fire. Like we're battling
Mm.
and helping this company not only become compliant to those laws, but also giving them the paperwork and the advice and stuff like that that they need to say, okay,
You're good
here,
to go.
here you go, plaintiff. Like we're
Yeah.
good. Let's settle this without having even more come out of their pocket, right?
Yeah, it's a big thing to take on. We did that at Young Living when I was there, and I mean I was there for 8 years, and I remember the first lawsuit in 2016, and our lawyers came with us and were like, "Hey, this is happening now, so we need to start planning ahead so it doesn't happen for us." So even by the time I left last year, there was constant scanning, constant audits, constant looking at it every time we would do updates. And to your point where you're like, hey, the developer maybe didn't know, it's that right brain, left brain. Like the development is not design. And
Yeah.
just to add a little clarity to those who are listening, like the things that that need to be compliant are if you have, for example, to try to spell it out so that the listeners can understand as well. if you have a sort of white background and then tan or light words on top of it, somebody who has trouble reading anyway, that's really hard to see, right? So that's one aspect of it, is you need to be able to see all the words and make sure the colors and the backgrounds work for visual aspects. But then there's also all of these tools that people use, just like we were talking in the beginning. My phone reads to me, right? And a lot of people, they get on their computer or their phone and they have these tools that read to them and say, here's what you need to know, and here are the buttons that you can push or not push or whatever. And if those tools don't have the technology on your website to read it correctly, or if it's not formatted correctly, then it's a bad experience for them and they can't participate like everyone else. And so that's kind of what you're tackling with these clients now, is that, you're going through the website, doing the audit and saying, hey, well, you need to update these colors and you need to make the shading behind this better. And, this tool can't crawl that section of your website. And that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of like what you're doing. And that's what's exciting you right now, right?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we love to be able to help people so that they don't get sued, right? Because that's just a lot of time and money and funds that especially small and medium-sized businesses don't really have accessible, nor do they want to spend it on those when they could be spent on a lot more other productive things, right? But also just the fact of like helping the web, the internet in general become more accessible to everybody, like it makes a difference. There's actually a stat that 1 in 4 people actually have a disability in the world that meets one of those criteria. So you literally have a 25% chance of someone coming to your website and not being able to effectively have a good experience, which causes problems, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm super excited about was, and that we launched this year, is on our website, we actually made a free tool for everybody to be able to go in, literally put in their website, and they can have an audit of their website to see if it's compliant or not within literally seconds. And so we had our team develop that so that, you don't have to go in, get a sales rep to give you pricing and a quote, or like pay, for an audit anymore. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can literally just go do it and see it. And if you are compliant, great. You can literally wipe away the sweat and be like, okay, we're good. If not, if you're only semi-compliant or non-compliant, okay, well, then that allows you to be able to take the actions necessary, right? And anybody can use it. They don't have to go through us to become compliant, right? But it allows people to have more accessibility, to have the ability to see where their current website is at. So yeah, we're just making a bunch, and we're in the process of not only having that tool, but a bunch of other tools to be able to help companies see where their current marketing is and strategically start making some of those decisions of how to move forward.
I think that's very important for any business owners out there listening. Being proactive on this versus reactive is going to save you thousands, if not millions of dollars, depending on the size of your company. So go take advantage of this tool. Go to your website, which is arcticmarketingsolutions.com. Is that right?
You can go to arcticms.com. That might be a little easier.
Okay.
Yep.
arcticms.com and check out that tool. See where you're at, where your website's at, and reach out to Kason if it comes back bad, right? But being proactive and understanding where you're at instead of waiting for someone to come and sue you and then being like, oh man, I should have done that. I think that's so important. So I want to jump into and talk about, and I don't know if this is the part you wanted to use for the tactics, but I want to talk about your, you and I were talking on the phone maybe a month or so ago about some of the struggles as being an agency where somebody's like, hey, I just want SEO, or I just want paid ads, or kind of this a la carte service. And you're like, well, the problem is, and I agree with you, is that people don't see the full marketing vision, right? And how SEO plays with paid ads and how email works, right? And how they holistically work together. And you have a program or a plan that you put together. Can we dive into that? I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, it kind of goes along with the tools that we're trying to make accessible, right? It really comes, like, in my experience, right, when I was talking about the fact that I tried to use agencies or freelancers to be able to do one-off projects or to do a specific channel, a lot of the time, like what you were saying, they're like, those agencies are like, yeah, a sale, I'll help you.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily do the background check to see if your website or your company is really in a position to tackle it. Right.
Right.
And so I was actually featured back in 2023 on NBC, ABC News, Advertising Today, a lot of the national and
Yeah.
local news networks actually on this, but we have developed what's called a milestone model. And what it allows businesses to do, especially us, like as the agency, is we're able to ask those important questions and see what they've done in the past, see where they're currently at, and help them assess the best plan to actually move forward for actual sustainable growth. Because, we're not in it to just help people, oh yeah, let's help you run your ads. Okay, well, if there's no strategy or plan behind it for growth, then you're just burning money.
Sure. Yeah.
And so just kind of going into the milestone model, so it's broken up into 3 different stages. And so the milestone model, the first stage is actually the foundational stage. And so this is where we actually assess where a company's at when it comes to their brand design, their brand messaging. They're super important. Their website. So depending on if they have a website or not, and we go through kind of a checklist of like, okay, are you using best practices? Is it really helping convert people into customers or leads or whatever your goal as a business is? And then we're able to determine, okay, depending on that criteria, you need to be in stage 1, right? When it comes to stage 2, we're either moving forward from that, or depending on if the company is ready to be in stage 2, we then assess, okay, how's your online presence? How are you when it comes to credibility with Google? So, what does your SEO look like? What does it look like when people are searching for you, right? So more of your reputation management, so are you having good, reviews online on, Google My Business or Yelp or whatever it may be? Do you have, and we specifically specialize in directory listings. So making sure that your information across the internet and all these places are good. Back in our day, we got the yellow phone book on our front porch every month.
Right.
Well, that's no longer here, right? And it's transitioned digitally. And so knowing where to be able to place those is important. And so we're able to assess, okay, now that you've established more of the organic stuff, organic SEO, helping you be found online, helping you with your reputation management. This is also where we play a part in making sure that your website's also compliant to a lot of those WCAG and ADA laws. Okay, now that you've got that, you can then move to stage, and you've built that trust. So stage 2 is trust with the internet, trust with visitors. Now let's move you to stage 3, which is building your business and scaling. And so that's where a lot of people start. That's where you pay for Google ads, social media ads, outbound prospecting tools, email marketing, whatever it may be. When it's like stage 2 and stage 1 haven't even been attended to. And
so is this a free tool that somebody can get to? Is it something that that's like your onboarding process to analyze when they come to your agency, or how does that work?
Yeah. So currently it's part of our onboarding process to kind of do that assessment to be able to help. We offer that marketing strategy and kind of helping you do that for free. That's free knowledge. We want you to be able to understand where you're at and what you should go towards. We're hoping that a lot of the tools that we're building, like, the accessibility scanner and even an SEO scanner and like all of these different things that we'll have available, will kind of build out hopefully kind of a workbook or a free tool for others to be able to do it essentially mostly themselves, right? There's some things that we still have to kind of strategically dive into, with a lot of the tools that are only accessible to us to be able to actually see, the fine details, but at least they have a starting point, right? So hopefully, in the near future, we're hoping to have that available for a lot of people.
Nice. I think it's so important, the basic concept of it. Like if you're a business owner out there and you don't know which of those like 4 categories you fit in, I think it's important for you to understand that and understand if you just want, one a la carte product, making sure that the rest of your marketing plan is aligned. Because a lot of times what you should do if you're a company is at the beginning of the year, or really at the end of the year planning for the next year, you say, here's the marketing plan, here's everything that we're going to put into it, and here's how it's all going to play a part with each other, right? And how we're going to work with, launching this product and using SEO, or, getting ready for Black Friday, whatever. You need to be able to have that full strategy before you go to an agency or before you hire somebody to come in and do that a la carte thing. So I think that's very important for business owners to understand, as well as like knowing who your audience. I think we could backtrack even more and dive into that. But a lot of business owners don't really know who their target audience is. And I think that's a key that gets missed a lot as well. So you have a vast amount of knowledge in the digital space and in digital marketing. And so if we dive into a little bit more of the tactical stuff, if I'm a business owner and I can't afford an agency, like I don't want people to come to you and get a free thing if they're 100% not going to pay you for your service, because that's a waste of time, right? So if I'm an agency I'm not an agency, if I'm a business owner and I can't afford an agency, I don't know where to even start to hire somebody in-house. Where do I start? What can I look at to help elevate my business online?
I would have to say that there's free resources out there for you to be able to really pay attention to, right? YouTube has never been bigger when it comes to the educational space of being able to help learn and grow. In my opinion, and I've mentioned this even on my own podcast, it's better to hire someone who obviously knows what they're doing, as well as can do it more efficiently and faster. But if you really don't have those funds, getting your hands dirty is the best way to be able to really move things forward. And so learning where the tools and resources and knowledge are to be able to help move that forward is really essential. Podcasts like yours, other podcasts and books that will help you learn about the tactics of marketing, as well as the technical aspect of execution, are really important. One resource that's completely free is it's both on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but it's Crafting Success Online. That's a podcast that I do, and it's just pure free tools and resources and strategy of how to be able to, one, go about, web design and development, best practices for that, or marketing strategy, where you should start, and kind of highlighting a lot of the things we've talked about today. Or if you're wanting to do organic content, what's the best way to maximize your time and create as many resources as possible? Helping you move the needle on a lot of those things. So I think it really kind of comes down to, finding, free resources, people who know what they're talking about, especially. Other great resources that, I used while trying to develop my own knowledge was going to like udemy.com or other online educational courses and stuff to help, me grow and learn, and then start practicing and doing it. Right. So, a lot, I would say in today's age, we have so many resources and abilities to be able to just go out and venture that you really, other than maybe paying attention to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, you really can't go wrong. Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that out there too. There's a lot of like, if you're looking on TikTok and people are like, hey, I'm 12 and I make $1 million a minute. Like there's a lot of that out there too. So like, be careful, look at the person's background, understand what they're doing. But if I were to sort of put everything you just said into like a little synopsis. So you're saying, go find some education, go find some podcasts, understand the digital landscape like as a whole, right? And I think the next level up from that is go evaluate your business and get your baselines and find out what areas are good, what areas need adjustments, and then fine tune that education with Udemy or YouTube or something and say, okay, I have good content on the website, I have good structure, good speed, good everything, right? I have good captures for emails, all of that, good buying process, but I don't, I don't rank well in organic social media, whatever. Then you take that organic social media aspect and you go to an education place like YouTube or Udemy and dig in deeper that way, right? So is that kind of what you're saying, is like get your education, understand where you're at, look at your baseline for where your current company is, and then really take that education piece with podcasts like this and like yours, and with my podcast, we have this tactical piece at the end of it. You can go onto the podcast and you can search. If you want email marketing, we have a great podcast about email marketing. If you want paid advertising, we have a great one for paid advertising. So like, sure, listen to all of them. I would love that. But if you only want to know one, go do a search on the podcast and find that one. Go to the tactical piece. And on YouTube, I put it out into chapters so you can really skip forward right to the tactical piece and learn it. But either way, sorry, I'm talking a lot. So any other tactical advice you'd have beyond that?
No, I think you summed it up pretty good. I think that's the biggest thing. The only add-on that I would probably say is really sticking to that milestone model, right? So I have several resources out to be able to kind of go in depth in that on my podcast and whatnot. But really following that model is what helps businesses grow and have that success. So like just some of the examples that we have. So we worked with a startup company that like literally had bare bones nothing last year. And we started with them. We moved them from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. And roughly they spent, including paid advertising, they were spending roughly around $30,000 in their marketing investment, right? But because they followed that milestone model and the strategy behind it, they have 4x'd their investment because of that model. And, they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones to go literally from 0 to 6 figures within like, 6-7 months, right? There was another local company, and you don't even have to go through all of the stages. There was a local acupuncture clinic company down in American Fork that literally just did stages 1 and 2. And within 6 months of doing stages 1 and 2, they went from averaging 4 to 5 new, patients a week, and roughly seeing 60 patients in that given week to then 10 to 15 new patients in a given week and 90 plus, almost 100. And so literally within that 6 months of just following stages 1 and 2, they instantly increased their revenue by 50%. And a lot of these companies like the acupuncture clinic have tried the freelancers, tried the agencies, tried the one-offs, and it doesn't work, right? But when you put those stages together and put them tactically and move along that, it makes the biggest difference. So, I mean, that's my only, I guess, highlight really is stick with that model. It's proven, it works, and it'll work for every small and medium-sized business and even bigger businesses, right? If you stick with that model, I can guarantee you success because it's been proven time and time again. There hasn't been a client that I've worked with that has moved through that model that hasn't seen grow.
That's awesome. Very cool. Kason, where do you see the future going?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously talk and advances when it comes to AI and VR and AR and whatnot. I'd probably have to say AI is obviously changing the game drastically. It's changing things rapidly enough to where a lot of the marketing initiatives that you used to be able to segment and do, SEO, copywriting, website, are starting to almost merge together again. Back 30 plus years ago, traditional marketing and copywriting and stuff like that was really the only, and like TV ads, billboards, radio, those were like the biggest forms and how you're actually able to do marketing and get customers, right? And so with AI, it's almost like taking a lot of those things back to that era of, okay, now that we have all these tools to grow and do the work for us, now we need to focus on almost like the copy that we go into, right? And so that can relate to, your website. It can relate to VR and just making sure that your captions or whatever it is you're wanting to get people's attention to is very clear. I definitely think that, virtual reality is starting to become more of reality, but augmented reality is kind of almost a medium step in between. And I don't think people are quite ready to be able to jump into another reality. Especially with the COVID pandemic, people like to interact with each other, right? We like the reality we live in. And so it's almost like a step in between. And I think as technology continues to grow, augmented reality really is going to be, I think, the next step that we'll probably be seeing in the next 10, 15 years of like, hey, the interactions and marketing and stuff like that in between us, between life and virtually right in front of us, is probably where it's really headed. So pay attention to copy and things in front of you, probably with big goggles.
Yeah, right. Anybody with a VR headset walking around the street, pay attention to that.
Yep.
Man, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the call and give us your knowledge around marketing. I've loved learning a little bit more about you. So I have two questions at the end of every podcast, and then I want you to tell us how everybody can get in touch with you. So the first question is, if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that be?
It's kind of funny because with recording this episode, it's after you had actually published your LinkedIn post about what everybody else was saying. And it was always just relax, like everything's going to be okay. And I agree to that. I'd probably say, going back, one thing I wish I really would have focused on specifically in like marketing is copywriting and the language of how I attract or how I grab someone's attention, because that really makes all the difference in website development, email, social ads. Like, it kind of bleeds into all those different things. So one thing that I guess I wish I would have told myself back then was, okay, you're doing great at all this stuff, Kason, but let's pull the reins just a little back and focus on the written side of things.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. Do you have any leaders, books, podcasts that currently inspire you right now?
Yeah. I love listening to Russell Brunson. He's been a lot of fun to be able to pay attention to with his podcast, The Marketing Secrets Show. Some other ones that I love listening to are also like Marketing Millennials. That one's a really good one. One book that I probably would say, if anybody's looking to really up their understanding of marketing specifically and how things are attractive and catch, is actually a book called Contagious by Jonah Berger, or Berger, however you pronounce that. So that one's probably my favorite book that I've written. Marketing and anything in between, right? For me, it's like I need to get the information, but I also need it to be entertaining and not as like some other business books where it's like really drawn out and so technical. It gives you the stats and stuff like that, but it's a little bit more engaging. But yeah, those are some of the things that I love listening to and reading.
Nice. Very cool. Kason, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. Feel free to add me as a connection on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on that. You can also go to the website and request, more information and stuff like that to be able to have kind of that one-on-one session. Mention it in the message that you'd like to talk to me specifically, and our team will make it so that we can have a one-on-one. But yeah, those are the main things or main ways I'd say you could get a hold of me.
Nice. And your website again is arcticms.com, right?
That is correct.
Nice. Very cool. Well, thanks again for taking the time to jump on and enlighten us. And I look forward to getting this session out. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Eli. I really appreciate being on here, and it was a lot of fun.
Thanks everyone else for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.